Hello and welcome to a new video. Today we're going to take a look at the Skeledirge in the Open Great League, but this is going to be the top 1 team from Pvpoke. Pvpoke also has their own list basically for the main leagues, I think, for what teams are supposed to be decent. So let's take a look if this team is actually decent, because it was really surprising to see this team here in general at number 1. They actually had the normal Poliwrath here. I have the Shadow variant. Honestly, I feel like the difference is not really there, but like it's still totally fine to go for the normal variant as well. But yeah, I just only had the Shadow 1 build, so I went for this one. But otherwise, we're going to have a team here with the Skeledirge in the back and the Cradily in the lead, which is going to be a very interesting one, as you're going to be able to predict here that the opponent goes into, I guess, their Steel type and win this game with that. Next opponent, we're going to have a Mantine in the lead. Cradily is basically our only answer for something like a Mantine, because like water is going to be really tricky for the Skeledirge, plus also the flying type is going to be very tricky for the Poliwrath. So here we're going to be able to at least go into our Skeledirge against the opponent's Registeel. I can go for a Shadow Ball, which is going to be able to do a ton of damage. If we didn't get debuffed, we could have farmed them down here, but this is totally fine, still okay for us. We're going to just go for the Disarming Voice, and so we can get the knockout against the opponent, as they're going to most likely swap back into the Mantine, and at least I can realign my Pokemon now, which is insanely important for this one, because you don't want to have the matchup of your Poliwrath against the Mantine. I could honestly see Mantine being a little bit more common in the future just to counter Poliwrath, but here we're going to be able to just go ahead and let the first move go through, but also I'm going to let the second move go through, as I hope that my Poliwrath can win the game. They're going to have this Alolan Sandsearch in the back. Goodbye there, man. Next opponent, let's see what they're going to run. We're going to have here a lead that I actually encountered so many times now. I already played like around actually nearly 6 sets already for the Great League coming back, and I encountered a lot of Dragonair leads. And so here, I feel like the best thing that they can do is just play out the Zero Shield scenario. So you're not going to go for any kind of shield at all, because they're always going to be able to win the Zero Shield. Everything else is going to be a little bit tricky. But now you can also decide to swap out into your Poliwrath like I did here and go for a Scald. If you get a debuff, that's going to be great, but it doesn't really matter in this scenario anyway, because you can just go for the full farm down after your Scald, and this is going to be kind of nice for you, as you can now realign. You're going to have a ton of energy on your Poliwrath. If they go back into their Dragonair, you would be able to counter them down, but they decided to go into their Wish Cast, which is going to be kind of okay for me, but going to be a little bit scary for the backline there. So they're going to go for a charge move. It's most likely going to be the Mud Bomb, but it's actually going to be the Scald, and this allows me to go for my own Scald, which is going to take the opponent down here, as I can just go for the full counter down against the Dragonair as well as the Wish Cast. Good game there. Next opponent, we're going to have a Dragonair in the lead again, and this is exactly what I told you, but here this time around I played differently, and I don't know why I even did this. Like, this was definitely before the other one, yeah, definitely not do this, because like basically if your Skeledirge going to be aligned against the opponent's Dragonair, if we don't get energy on this Pokemon already, it's going to be a very tough time, and here we're going to get completely hard-walled by the opponent's Medicham. This is going to be a bad matchup for me, and they can even get the extra farm down there as well. I can go for a full farm down with my Skeledirge, but hopefully they're running Dynamic Punch, so everything would be resisted, but they're actually running Psychic, which is going to be way worse for me, so I did not really expect this at all, but I can at least go for some Disarming Voices here, but no, you get completely hard countered from the beginning till the end, and there is nothing I can do about it. Literally nothing I can do about it. Like, there's... what am I supposed to do? Like, the lead was a loss, the side swap was a loss, and the Pokemon in the back was a hard counter as well, so those games are just going to exist anyway. Interesting team from the opponent, very weak to charm users though, so maybe not even as ideal either, or like Clefable completely destroys the entire team. But as you can see here, that's going to be of course fine for them, as they can now knock me out and I can move on to the next game. Actually was able to have, I think, a 8-game win streak with this team, so it is actually a solid lineup. So we can talk a little bit more about how this team is going to function and if I think it's going to be good or not. I think it's a solid lineup. Like, it's definitely something that can work out for you, but I feel like it's a little bit trickier to play than like most teams. It's not really that straightforward, because it really depends on what you use as your say swap, how you can want to respond to like certain leads. So it's a little bit tricky to play, but definitely an interesting one here. We're going to be able to counter down the opponent's Dugong, which is kind of nice. as they are going to decide to swap into their Wishcast, allowing me to go for a Scald here. Scald is going to hopefully get the debuff against them. It does actually get the debuff, which is kind of okay for us. And now we can realign our Pokemon, which is super important for us, because we don't want to have our Fire type against the Wishcast. Speaking of Fire type, here we're going to have another Skeledirge, which is not going to appreciate the Rock Sides at all. I tried to get the shield here from the opponent, did not work out, but like this I can just go for the full farm down most likely with my own Skeledirge, as the Shadow Ball is gonna get shielded. I can go for the full farm down, and like this I can just go for the disarming voices here. I don't really care too much about this matchup anymore, and this is going to be really good for us, because yeah, the opponent kind of gave up at this point already, and we can move on into the next game. Let's see what we're going to encounter here. We're going to have the Cradily against a Swampert. Decent for us, so we're going to have, we're going to see the opponent swapping out, and they're going to swap out into the Umbreon. Amazing for our Poliwrath. So far, nice hard counter for us at least. Last time around it was against us, but here we can go for a Skull, trying to get some debuff onto the opponent, so the next last resort doesn't do as much damage. We're gonna get the debuff, but the opponent is actually not even going up to the last resort, which I feel like they could have been able to get there. But it's going to be okay for us. We can go for the full farm down, and even if they go back into the Swampert, like, they're still going to have to take a Scald here, and like, this would not really work out for them, and they're going to have actually a Skeledirge in the back, which is going to be as bad for them. I can just go for the charge move. The opponent is going to use a shield, but they're going to catch the next move onto the Swampert. The Scald is coming through, going to do a ton of damage, get the debuff, as well as we can go for the farm down with the Cradily. And like this, we're going to have a ton of energy on Cradily. We have our own Skeledirge in the back. They're going to let the Rock Slide go through, and I think at this point, I think they just had enough already. Like, honestly, Cradily is literally doing a great job so far. Like, definitely needs some better IVs, but very cool Pokemon. Also a very cool Pokemon against the Pelipper. Again, our only real answer for water and flying type Pokemon is going to be our Cradily, so it's very important to keep this Pokemon around until the opponent is kinda low, or we have like some energy on either of our Pokemon in the back, which would help us out in the matchup. But as you can see here, we can get 2 Rock Sides off before they can even like threaten our knockout, which is going to be amazing, as the opponent going to let the move go through, allowing me to just let this move go through as well. It's going to be just a Weather Ball, and so we're going to be able to get a shield plus switch advantage, and me being kind of silly here is swapping out into the Poliwrath, which is not an ideal matchup against something like the Superior. I can go for the Icy Wind. I don't know if this is going to do enough damage. Let's see what the opponent is going to do. They're going to use a shield here, which is okay for me, but what I decide to do here is maybe something that's kind of wrong. I most likely should have let this move go through, go into my Skeledirge and try to win this game with that one, but I decided to use a shield, and it was definitely not the worst decision, because they're going to have the Registeel in the back. I can do a ton of damage, and the opponent decides to forfeit already. Let's take a look at the next opponent. We're going to have here the great lead of Cradily against the Carbink, and they're going to go into a Golden Go. Like, what the hell, this spice level is crazy. But we can just literally just use one shield and farm them down, so it's not going to be the worst thing for us. And they're gonna most likely go back into their Carbink, allowing me to go for some Shadow Balls. Shadow Ball is going to be able to hit them and do some decent amount of damage. You kind of want to get some damage anyway before I go into my Cradily again, because yeah, like, this matchup is still not going to be the best. Like, honestly, Carbink, as soon as you do neutral damage with like rock typing with a Carbink, it's still going to do so much damage against no matter Pokemon they're going to play against. But here we're going to have a perfect matchup for us as well. With a Dugong in the back, we're going to have now the alignment of the Poliwrath against it, and honestly, a counter damage is insane from this Pokemon. It's even wilder than whatever like the Medicham did prior. So here we can go for a Scald. Gonna not get the drop here, but it's going to be okay, because the opponent is going to get the drop with their Icy Wind here as a bait, which was a smart move, of course, but I kind of had to do what I had to do there, basically using the shield, because now I can go for another Icy Wind here, and I can get the debuff onto their attack, securing this win here, as I can go for another Icy Wind and knock them out. Good game there to the opponent. Let's move on to the next opponent. Next opponent coming up, you're going to have the Galarian Stunfisk in the lead. And honestly, decided to swap out into my Skeledirge this time around, which was a wise choice, because they're actually going to run the Azumarill in the back. And if you didn't know this, if the opponent's Azumarill does not run the move Hydro Pump, this is actually going to be a fairly okayish matchup for me, because I can take a Poliwrath and I can also take an Ice Beam, and so I can force Switch advantage or a Shield advantage, and I'm totally okay with that. Something that I don't think I would have been able to do with a Poliwrath, so I'm totally okay with that in general here. But the opponent decides to go back here and go for the Ice Beam, which is going to do some super effective damage, of course, but I can just go for my Grass move and knock them out, and I will be able to get rid of one of the hardest answers for my Poliwrath. But they're going to actually have in the back the, Trevenant, which is not going to be ideal for me. I can go back into my Poliwrath now against the opponent's Stunfisk, and I did not think that this could have been an Earthquake yet, but they went for 5 more, and I was like, no way, this is an Earthquake here, but it is actually an Earthquake, and yeah, we're gonna take some huge damage, but I can still go for an Icy Wind here, and was like, hopefully I can still get to the next one in time. I am not able to, but I think I deny the opponent's fast move here, which is kind of important for me, as I can now go for a Rock Slide, and we see it does 2-shot the opponent, so we can now go for the CMP tie, use a shield, and like this, we're gonna be able to win this game against the Trevenant as well. Again, like this team worked out super well for me, which I don't even know really how, but it was a fun one to play. Next opponent, we're going to have a Poliwrath in the lead. You're going to usually mirror into your own Poliwrath. This is most likely the worst possible Pokemon to encounter for the entire team though, because like the best answer for you is your own Poliwrath, and that's not going to be always ideal. But here I can go for one Scald against the opponent's Charger Bug, which is kind of cool, but I don't get to another move, which is not really cool. And you know what's also not really cool? The opponent is actually not running Discharge. They're running Crunch, and I don't like this. I'm a Ghost type. I don't like Crunch here. But I can go for some Farm Down, and also I can go for some Disarming Voices, which will allow me to knock out the Poliwrath very, very soon. But they decide to use a shield, which I'm okay with. I always outspeed them. I should have went for my Disarming Voice immediately here, though, by the way, this would have been a better play by me. They're going to decide to go for the Icy Wind. I can go for my Disarming Voice now, but they swap out into the Registeel, and this is going to be a very, very tough one, because yeah, my Skeledirge is debuffed, and the opponent's Registeel is going to be something that I can only take down with my Skeledirge. I get the shield from the opponent, I can still go for a Shadow Ball, and at this point I was like, maybe there's still a chance for Cradily to actually do something here. But we have to find out shortly, because the opponent goes for a charge move. They need now 10 more fast moves to get to the next Focus Blast, so I can go for the Rock Slide before they can reach that, which is really important. And I also will be able to still survive a move from the opponent's Poliwrath. Even an Icy Wind is going to be non-stab, and I already have a move start, and the opponent is very, very low, so Cradily is actually going to be able to win this game, knocking out a Fine type and a Steel type with a Rock Slide. Who would have thought? Next opponent coming up, let's see what they're going to run. We're going to have a Dragonite in the lead. This is going to be also a little bit of a trickier one. Again, every single Pokemon on this team has some coverage against Dragonite, but they're also all kinda weak against it. Both Pokemon in the back have some super effective, even like here we're going to have some double super effective coverage with the Icy Wind against the Dragonite, but also the fast move is going to be resisted. And for our lead, it is basically the same as well. We're going to have a double resisted fast move, but super effective damage with Rock Slide. So it's a little bit of a trickier one, but we're going to be able to get a shield here from the opponent. I decide to let this next move go through. It's going to be very likely a superpower, but I kind of wanted to keep my shield for my Skeledirge in the back. Great play by me. Bastion in the back is always exactly what I want to face, right? Yeah, like Bastion is a tricky one. Honestly, it's not really a tricky one for this team. Like, Skeledirge is still okay, as you can see here. It still does some damage, but it's not really great. But yeah, Cradily is kind of also okay for it, because we still have Grass Knot for it. But honestly, like, Poliwrath of course has a great matchup for it. So it's usually not the worst Pokemon to face, but with a team that has no Poliwrath anymore, it was very tricky here. Next opponent, second to last one, we're going to have a Talonflame in the lead. And this is going to be most likely a very brutal match, if I still remember this correctly. You usually go straight for the Rock Slide, because it allows you to definitely get the shield from the opponent. They usually would go for the Flame Charge here, I would imagine. But yeah, I decided to use the shield here on the first one. It's going to be a Fly, which is kind of good for me. But I can just go for another Rock Slide. And I know at this point, sadly, that the opponent should be able to outspeed me to the next one, because they always go for like one fast move, which is very smart by them. So yeah, I'm going to let this move go through, and I decide to swap out immediately. And yeah, if I just went into my other Pokemon, I would have been so much better off. And I don't think I should have used the shield here either, because like now what's going to happen next? I mean, I still have Ice and maybe it's going to help me, but yeah, I can knock out the opponent's Superior. They're going to have a Wishcast in the back. I guess even if I just let the move go through, it didn't really matter, because Wishcast against Skeledirge is also not going to be ideal. So my only play is here to hopefully knock them out or like farm them down with my Skeledirge, which I'm not sure if it's going to happen. No, the opponent decides to swap out immediately. And now I have to guess basically when the opponent gets to move and then swap out into my Cradily. And I didn't do this correctly. I thought that they needed one more fast move. They didn't, and so I'm going to lose this match up. But it's going to be okay, as we can move on into the final battle for today. Next opponent, I think they even tagged me on Twitter, so good game to you. We're going to have here the Lantern in the lead, which is going to run Water Gun. Not as ideal for our lead, at least. Also for our backline. I guess for the Skeledurge, it's going to be a little bit better for them, but for my Poliwrath, actually Water Gun is kind of ideal for me. So we kind of hardball the opponent. Great catch there on the first one, but it's going to be okay because you can just go for the full farm down. We're going to see the opponent's Lantern coming back in. Scald is going to do some very solid damage here, as we're going to see also the attack drop coming in. I will be able to reach another Scald because of this, which of course is kind of huge for me. Kind of everything goes against the opponent at this point. I can go for the full farm down because I only need one bullet seed and that's all that it takes for a full farm down at this range. But they're actually going to have a Skeledurge in the back, and we have our own Skeledurge in the back, and we still have our Cradily, and they're still kind of forced to use a shield here, and they're still kind of underestimate that Rock Slide charges very, very fast, and so they are going to be in a very interesting spot here because they're actually going to let the next move go through as well. And so we have a 2-shielded Skeledurge against a Skeledurge with 100 energy. It does not really help them. 2 Incinerates is all it takes to knock them out, so this is going to be it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to leave a like, and I'll see you then. Bye bye.